And then it just taught me, it reiterated what I've always said is love fiercely, man. Love fiercely. I don't know why people are afraid to love. People are afraid to love.
Afraid to get hurt.
You can't.
Fear.
I know, but you can't love deeply. Like, you can't feel that connection and incredible benefit that comes out of loving somebody. And it's not even romantic love. It can be. But love is many different forms. And so love fiercely, man. Like, love on the people that are close to you. Love on people that you might not like. I mean, what does it hurt, right? You don't like them. You're not going to be best friends with them. Fine. That's fine. A lot of people don't like me. That's fine. But just love on them, because that sets you aside from everybody else in this world. Just love fiercely.
Welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, avid book reader, and developing salsa dancer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who've gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Welcome to episode 16 of the Amani Experience Podcast. This show, we have Sarah Chapman, who left her corporate job and started her own nonprofit. The favorite part about this interview today is just the stories that Sarah tells, as well as her affection and just how much her dad influenced her growing up, which I can personally relate to as well because my dad did the same for me. So I really like that. We have great energy throughout the show, lots of laughter and great stories. To the show we go. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to read today's guest bio and then we'll get to our conversation. Our guest today is a registered nurse by degree, but has the most bizarre CV. She's practiced neonatal and pediatric ICU nursing before diving into the world of medical device, clinical education, and sales, where she discovered the hidden West African country of Benin and her passion for forgotten children and the gravitational pull to rescue them. She's a mover, a shaker, a great white shark diver, risk taker, and she still believes in magic. We have to introduce and welcome Sarah Chapman to the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Amani.
You're very welcome. First off, we're going to do a little geographic check-in. So we're both here in Manhattan Beach, California. Mm-hmm. And you reside now where?
I live in San Francisco, California.
Yes, so the Bay Area, or the Yay area, as we like to say. Now, tell us about this great white shark diver skill. How did that come to be?
It's a good thing I am a risk taker. Jacques Cousteau was my hero growing up, and I read every book he possibly wrote. I did a book report on him. I made my sister dress up as a shark when she was little and run around and film her. So it was natural that when I grew up, I still really love marine biology. That's my nerd. I'm such a nerd. I'm admitting that to everybody listening. And so I decided at the top of my bucket list a couple years ago was to go great white shark diving. I've done other shark dives without cages, but the great whites was with a cage down in the Guadalupes, where they filmed Shark Week.
All right.
And I went down there, and this right hand, actually touched a female great white shark in the wild. I ripped my glove off, put it outside the cage, and it ran down her whole body.
Yeah, that's a no for me. That wouldn't be me, but props to you.
Thank you.
Very impressive.
Thank
but
you.
Sharks and me, no thank you. But that's still impressive, so thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And by the way, we love nerds. I'm a nerd too, so nerds unite. So.
We gotta stick together, man.
We definitely do. Let's see here. Let's start off. Tell us your story, how you first went from working in corporate America, because what we talk about on the Amani Experience Podcast is people who used to work in the corporate life and then they jump to the creative life. You're our first person, our first guest who's gone to the nonprofit route, which is very admirable, so props to you. Tell us kind of how you went from working in corporate America to transitioning to BABB and where you are now.
Well, I was working at a medical device company for about 5 years, and I loved it. I actually really loved my corporate job. I was doing product development. The device we had at the time was really inspirational, and it really helped patients in the hospital. During that time, I went on a humanitarian trip to a little place in West Africa called Benin, Benin. It shares a western border with Nigeria. Most people know where that's at. It's a very tiny place, about the size of Tennessee. So I went on this humanitarian trip with a totally different organization, and they said to me, your application's been approved. We're going to send you to West Africa, to this place called Benin, get your ticket. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm finally going to Africa. I had never been on the continent at that time. So I got my ticket, and then I looked at a map. So I already had my airline ticket, and then finally realized, I should probably figure out where Benin is. And so I went there for the first time on this 2-week trip, and you're traveling for like 36 hours to get there. So you show up, and you're exhausted, and you're sweaty, and your deodorant no longer works anymore, and you're with 12 strangers who are all there on a humanitarian team, a medical team. And you land at 1 a.m, because there's only 2 or 3 flights in and out of Benin a week. You land at 1 a.m, and that door opens to the plane, and that balmy, hot African air just hits you. And you get down onto the tarmac, and you're exhausted. And I remember my feet hit the tarmac, like physically hit the ground, the continent, for the first time. And I felt a palpable electricity go from my feet into my heart. It was a physical feeling. And I had this feeling like I was home. And if any of you see a picture of me, I'm clearly not African, but I felt like I was in a place that I could call home, and in a place that my heart already loved, even though I knew nothing about it at the time. And so that was my introduction to this tiny country. And then fast forward, I do my 2 weeks. I'm still working my corporate job. Fast forward to a year. I decide to go back to Benin on my own for 2 weeks and stay with a friend I had met previously. And that's when I decided, and I saw a lot of the need with forgotten children. So there's a lot of different cultural practices where there's obviously a lot of orphans. I probably don't even need to go into all the detail, because unfortunately there's a lot of nonprofits out there that exploit the children of Africa, which is not what we're about. So I don't feel like I really need to talk about poverty and what's happening in countries like India or a continent like Africa. But I saw the need for forgotten children and orphaned, and the child sex trafficking and trade and child marriages. And I decided to come back to the U.S. and quit my job, like cold turkey. I loved my job. I loved the company I worked with. I came back and I put together a plan. It took me about 5 months to execute it. I put together my personal financial plan, how I was going to survive, because all of a sudden I was going to live like a college student at 33 years old. So I did my plan, and then I sat down one night at 11 p.m. and I wrote my COO a letter, and it went like this. Dear Christopher, thank you for the experience you've given me for the last 5 years, blah, blah, blah. I regret to inform you that I will be resigning from my position to move to an African village in the bush and work at a clinic. Sincerely, Sarah. And I sent it at about 11 p.m. on a Friday, and then realized, what the hell did I just do? I sent it and I was like, what did I just do? Oh my God, this is so scary. I was single at the time. You have your own rent, you have your own life going on. And you're like, how am I going to make this work? I don't know how I'm going to make this work. But I knew that I had to look fear in the face and say, this is where you're supposed to be. Follow that electricity that went through your body 2 years ago when you landed in Benin. And I did. And before I knew it, 3 months later, I was living in Africa in a village with no running water, no electricity, working at a clinic I had found through connections, and scouting the area, learning the language, learning the culture, finding projects, and discovered my passion. And that electricity never went away in my heart. I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. So after that 6 months, came back to the States, started the 501c3 officially, which is very similar to starting a business, actually, which I don't know if a lot of people realize. It's essentially a lot of the same process. And then went back to Africa for about 4 months, and now I just go back and forth and back and forth. But this whole thing started in 2012. We're almost 6 years old.
Almost 6 years old.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. Tell us, why did it feel like home once you landed?
There is no tangible answer for that. I can't tell you someone greeted me on that tarmac and made me feel like I was at home. It was very much a spiritual, ethereal feeling, which might sound very hippy-dippy, which I kind of am half hippie. I'm just going to warn everybody.
Thanks for sharing.
Yep. But it's that internal voice. So people call it a conscious, people call it your internal voice talking to you. It was a palpable feeling that translated into my soul. It was just in my gut. And I think a lot of people feel that multiple times in their life for things. And we ignore it, or we say that's whimsical, or we say that's too scary, or we say, I'm not sure if I'm capable of it, I'm fearful of rejection or whatever, and we push that feeling aside. And for me, I was listening to it. I had always gotten into to be a nurse, to care for people and to love people. You definitely don't do it for the fame or the glory or the money, that's for sure. You're getting like pooped on in the hospital by babies. It's not a glorious job. But I knew I always wanted to do something bigger with my degree and something that was global and international. And that feeling, that small jolt of electricity, I respected and I listened to. And I took baby steps at first to see and discover what that was and where that came from. And it's something that's just been inside of me. And that's what's so funny, because I think we all have something inside of us. Every single human, given where you're born, socioeconomic status, we have something in us that innately we are good at and that we love. And if we cultivate it, it can become a fire. I just think that a very small percentage of people cultivate that fire. And when you do, I think you're living in your own fire that's already in you. You're just putting more fuel on it. And that's what heats up the world around you in your individual life, right?
True.
So it's nothing tangible. It was in me, and I listened to it, though.
Why do you feel people are afraid or don't cultivate the fire that's calling them?
I think people are driven by this is my opinion, I think humans are driven by two major things, is fear or hope. And I think that humans in general as a species tend to listen to fear more because of either the things I just shared, either rejection or instability. I mean, that is a real fear, especially financially. If you have a family, I mean, that is scary. Fear will drive us. And I think that a lot of people will listen to the fear instead of look it in the face and say, I see you, fear. You're here, and I acknowledge you're here in my life. But I am politely going to either go through you or go around you, because between me and my goal is you. And I've got to get through you to get to where I want to be. And you might fail. Actually, a lot of people fail. I have many failures in Build a Better Benin that I had to learn from. Many. I didn't know what I was doing, Amani. I had no idea what a 501c3 was. And you kind of look fear in the face and you go through it. And so I think a lot of people look at fear or look at their reasons why they don't follow a passion, and it's easier to be where you're at. It's easier to stay where you're at, where it's safe. Yeah. Play it safe. Right. Yeah. And you can grow in safety. I think you can. I think you can grow like a wildfire, though, when you're outside the confines of your own bubble or your own sphere that you put yourself in.
True. Now, when you told your parents and your close friends, I'm moving to Africa for at least 6 months, what was their reaction and how did you handle that?
Well, my friends were amazing. They all thought I was crazy. My company thought I was crazy too. They all thought I was nuts, and everybody wanted to know, how are you going to do this, Sarah? Like, how are you going to afford to just quit life, essentially, like quit Western life in Southern California, where I was living at the time.
On the beach.
Yep. And just go to the bush. And I use the word bush, by the way, because that is what they call it in Benin. Just to clarify, I don't know if people get offended, but that's what they call it in Benin, is the bush. And so my friends were more supportive, right? My mother, though, Mrs. Chapman, bless her heart, she told me a story she had never told me before. She said, Sarah, I used to sit in church at night. I used to sit in church when you were a little girl, and missionaries would come and speak during Sunday service. And they would have missionaries from all over the world come, and it was lovely. And I used to pray, dear Jesus, do whatever you want with my daughter, Sarah. She's strong-willed and opinionated, but please don't ever take her to Africa.
And what happened?
I landed in Africa.
Serendipity.
Yes.
So tell us, why do you love the nonprofit that you created, and why do you love going over to visit Africa 2 to 3 times a year?
It's definitely changed. Every time I go, that love changes. It just grows. I'd say now, the love I have I call them my kids, the love that I have for my kids keeps me coming back. It's that simple. They're like my babies. I love the country as a whole. It's a very magical place. There's a lot of stigma around West Africa. There's a lot of misconception, and there's a lot of media coverage of it that portrays it very poorly. And I'm not saying that there is not unrest there. Of course, there is unrest, and there are diseases, and we know all of those things. But why are we not taking the time to show how beautiful and magical it is? And I'll speak for Benin. I've been to other countries in West Africa, but it is a magical, beautiful place with rainforests and waterfalls and beautiful, beautiful cultural practices. I mean, some of the most beautiful birthing rituals when women have babies, and kindness and friendly, and people are not running around with machetes throughout the villages trying to behead people. I mean, that is not the world it is. Mm-mm. It is, I have learned so much more than I could ever possibly teach my partners over there, who are all Beninois, or my kids, or our whole board, put them together. They're not even doing justice to what we're learning from our partners.
What are like some of the top 2 or 3 things that you've learned that really catches you or surprises you looking back?
Well, I learned never to steal papayas from your neighbor's trees when I was living in the village.
Okay.
Benin is the birthplace of voodoo. And so I've learned a lot of what to do and what not to do when you do live there, when it pertains to the voodoo that you do. And then I forgot the question.
Just you shared 2 learnings. So anything else that pops to mind that you learned that really kind of caught you off guard, or you weren't expecting to learn when you were living there?
I learned the complexities of the phrase, "it takes a village." That is a very, very true statement in Benin. Women have multiple children there, and all of the women raise everybody's children. It is a group. The men will collectively go farm. The families take care of each other. It is the epitome of what a community is. And we don't have that here in the States. There, literally, your neighbor has your back, and they will help you farm, or they'll help you cook or raise chickens or whatever you need. It's a collective compound, like a community, not without problems, of course, but living in this community as an outsider looking in, it was very, very, very interesting. Very interesting. I learned a lot about healthcare. The healthcare is very different there. I learned a lot about cultural practices that you and I would say, wow, honestly, we'd say that's appalling. But then I learned, when you look at it from a perspective from somebody who has no resources and has to make hard decisions when it comes to their children and their families, you start to empathize, and you start to think, these are not bad people. They're in very bad situations, and they're doing the best they can with nothing.
Okay. Now, when you got there, I'm sure you stood out in a good way. Single white female in a village in Benin. What did you do to get acclimated? Because I'm sure you look different. People are looking at you like, who is this young lady coming to visit us, and why is she here? And maybe they had other people there that maybe weren't as genuine as you are. What did you do to get acclimated and build trust with the village?
Mm-hmm. Great. That's a great question. Because that can span across all businesses, right? How you gain trust is the biggest thing in business, partnerships, and whatever. Fortunately, I had worked at a clinic where the director pre-warned, I suppose, the village that a crazy blonde white girl was coming to live with them for 6 months. So they knew I was coming. I was the first foreigner that a lot of them had ever met. A lot of the children, actually, like every child in my village had never seen anybody from a Western nation, especially with light skin. And so, and because of former colonization from France, they had a lot of misconceived notions of what white people do and why they're there. And a lot of it is that white people are coming to either take our children or to change our practices and cultural practices. So I was already kind of up against a wall, and I'm the first person living with them. So the first thing I did was absolutely nothing. I did nothing. I didn't impose different medical practices at the clinic. I didn't try to make people speak English. I didn't, go out and show up and tell people, you can't you can't do that in medicine. You can't reuse a needle. Everybody's going to die of hepatitis. Like, if that's a normal practice. I did absolutely nothing but acclimate. I just learned, they speak French. I didn't speak French. They speak a tribal language called Fawn. I did not speak any Fawn. So I just basically showed up and I said, will you please teach me? I am here. The only reason I'm here is for you to teach me about your culture. And they would ask me why. And I said, because someday I think I want to live here. Someday I think I want to do something here. And I said, but I'm not here to teach you or give you any cultural change anything you're doing. I'm just here for you to teach me. And they, again, looked at me like I was crazy because they'd never experienced that or heard of somebody that does that. And I was just a sponge. I soaked up as much as I could. And then eventually, when they realized after a couple of months of this, and I was working in the clinic, so they did see me. I was working alongside their nurses, though.
Right.
And I would just do what the nurses told me to do. I wasn't there to change anything. And then after a couple of months of this, and they realized I'm not there to steal their babies. I'm not there to change the way you do things. I'm not there to judge you. Even though I saw cultural practices that would turn heads and, that were very, very, very sad. That wasn't my purpose. My purpose was to gain trust. And then after a couple of months of this, then you can softly maybe suggest things like, hey, maybe when the mom comes in to give birth, maybe we can just do these things a little bit differently. Like maybe we can cut the cord a little differently so the baby doesn't lose as much blood. What do you think? I mean, tiny things, or prevent infection by doing this, or why don't I go into the village and see what everybody thinks about having me here? Maybe teach a class on hand washing. What do you guys think? I mean, basic stuff that everybody else had to be on board for me to be able to implement.
Okay. When was the turning point when you realized, okay, I've started this, I've made some progress, this is really going to work, like it's going to happen? When was that turning point?
When we started, donors actually started giving money.
Okay, tell us more. Yes.
I have to admit, you go from this dream and a passion, and then you realize, we do need money to do this.
Yes.
Our ultimate goal and what we have now is the children's home. We built a children's home and we bought land, and we have a chicken farm, and we work with rural healthcare clinics, and we do health classes, and we work with a local orphanage that is not our own to provide resources and medications. I mean, we have many projects now. But in the beginning, I had I think I opened the bank account for BBB with, I think $100 is the limit for a nonprofit. And so I said, here's 100 of my dollars. And that turning point was, okay, wait, people are actually listening to what I say, and they're giving me money to do stuff. And it wasn't a lot of money. The good part is you don't have to have a lot to have a huge impact in Benin. But that was a turning point where I realized, okay, this is serious. This is, you started something, Sarah. You started a train down the tracks, and you can't stop it now.
No, you can't.
And that was the turning point where I was like, okay, I got to start meeting partners over there. I need to start really putting together tangible, land. What do we want to do? Partner with people that had my same passion and same heart strokes for what it would take to get things done in Benin that were Beninois, because I will not, nor will any of our board members who live outside of Benin. We do not run projects. We do not get involved in telling how projects should be done. We rely on I call them partners, but they're honestly our family members now. I mean, I consider Constantine my brother and his wife my sister. We're family. But I've set out to meet the right people, partner. And through divine intervention, I'm telling you, serendipity, people would start coming to me, and these great partnerships formed. I mean, I would say, yes is the answer, what is the question? That's actually my life motto. Yes is the answer, what is the question?
Good motto.
Thank you. I actually got it from someone I used to date.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a hidden benefit.
Yes. No, he was a great guy. Yes is the answer, what is the question? And so that just means, where are the open doors? Yep, I don't know what's on the other side of that door, but let's see what happens. And you have to be smart about it. I'm not saying this flippantly. I try to do everything with humor and fun, because especially when you're dealing with something like some of the cultural practices in Benin, it's not fun, and there is a lot of sadness. So we try to keep things fun. But I forgot about the question again.
No, you
Sorry.
Don't forget. You're doing wonderful. We'll continue to segue to other subjects. So keep sharing your stories. Doing great.
Can you cut that part out?
No, we're gonna leave it all in. When you think about your life and how your career with like the nonprofit and then, your regular kind of corporate life, what is something that scares you?
The biggest thing that scares me now, and let me put it a little bit into context, because I spent about 5 years building the organization and taking gigs here and there just so I could pay my rent. But I sold my car, I sublet my house, like I got rid of a lot of expenses. So my focus was building BABB, which meant fundraising like crazy, scouting projects, dealing with local governments. I mean, that place is quite corrupt. That is not a secret. I mean, we have had many difficulties and many weird things happen. So while I'm navigating this and also kind of consulting back in the States when I could find money to pay rent or whatever, those were my fears, right, back then. But then now we're about almost 6 years in, and the projects are running quite smoothly. We still do a lot of fundraising. I always say we're small but mighty. But now the projects are running quite smoothly. I don't need to be in the country as much. So I actually went back to a job that I really, really like. I call it my big girl job, just because, you got to pay rent.
Yes.
So now my biggest fear has changed. My biggest fear is, of course, fundraising is always on your mind. I mean, let's just get real here. It's the same with the business, right? What if we don't make revenue for a business, or what if we don't have donors? I have 9 children right now because we just finished the home and moved them in May of 2017.
Congratulations.
I'm so excited. They're so...
What's the age range of the kids?
About 5 to 17.
Got it.
We don't know exactly because they don't have birth certificates. So
Right.
we literally steal them off the streets and out of bad situations. But my current fear is, of course, fundraising, because now I have lives on the other side of that bank account. Before, it was like, we need to build something or we need to buy medications. Now I have Anne-Marie, I have Veronique, I have Victorian, I have Auspice. I have children now that rely on our organization. And my biggest fear is, number one, we won't be able to bring in money, and I have lives at the other side of that rely on this for a lifeline. And number two, I actually have fear of what if something happens to me? What if something happens to me and my kids are left without someone? Like we have a board, we'd be fine. But I do worry about that, because now there are people's lives at stake for what we do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Legitimate fear.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hope nothing happens to you. And you stay healthy and strong.
I keep great white shark diving, I can't guarantee.
Yeah, that's going to be a no for me again. All right, so how has a failure or an apparent failure, because you talked about failures earlier on, set you up for later success? And do you have a favorite failure of yours? Anything in life?
I have a favorite failure when it comes to Build a Better Benin.
Okay.
We started a project in the northern part of the country 5 years ago, and we purchased land with a partner there. And we went to the city, the village chief and the city mayor, and told them our plan to build a home for these abandoned, orphaned, and at-risk children. And he loved the idea, and he said, great. And so we started to get things moving along. We needed to build a well, all these things. And I found out that he was, it was a corrupt government. I learned the hard way. That even though promises were made and paperwork was signed, that meant diddly squat in this village. And the mayor, what he was doing is he would sell people land in the village, and then he would go back, him and his brother, and remark the territory, the edges of the actual parcel. And he would move the lines around so that his family could keep parcels. So we were just about to start building a well, and I found this out, that he was going to move, once the well was built, which was like $6,000, he was going to move the lines around and take that well from us. And then on top of that, the partner we were working with was not, she was a little, had some scrupulous activities that I found out later. And you put trust in people, and you hope that everybody wants to do the right thing, right? And you're working in a country where there's a couple language barriers, and you don't know the culture that well. And I thought I was making the right decisions on behalf of our organization, and the whole thing fell apart. We lost the land. Thank goodness we didn't build the well. We lost our partner, and we had to relocate children. I mean, it was a big debacle. And then donors also were telling me, I thought we were supposed to build a home for these kids. And I kept having to say, we are, and push it back. And so it had ramifications here too with donors, and that they're like, you said you were building a home and it's now been 2 years and you haven't done that. And it's because we had so many problems in this village. And thank goodness that whole thing that was a big debacle serendipitously pushed us to a village further south in Benin, where every single door opened, and it could not have opened more perfectly with us having privatized land, privatized home within this compound that's protected. The children are totally protected behind walls. We have the full support of the village. It has been just night and day when we change partners, change locations, and now I look at these kids we have, and I'm like, this is you. We were supposed to do this for you guys.
Right.
This group of children. I was like, oh my gosh, what if everything else up there and it had fallen apart and we would have squandered resources? And, I feel like every donor is very precious. That's a very precious thing to give us, that you're trusting us with, is your money. And we want to be good stewards of that. And so I just look back and I say, oh my gosh, thank God that didn't happen, because now here we are. But at the time it was a big failure. It was a big failure.
Okay. And what did we learn from that?
I learned the nuances of working in West Africa. That's for sure. And which I have a phrase, and I call it wah-wah.
Okay.
W-A. West Africa wins again.
Okay.
Wah, wah. So you learn the nuances, but then you just learn. I learned the hard way. Lick your wounds, Sarah, and vet people better. And even though you had this partner for 2 years, and she's the one that introduced you to Benin, actually, that doesn't mean there's not stuff going on behind the scenes. And really vet and do due diligence and take your time and do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah, some very valuable lessons.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us about the darkest time of your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
The darkest time in my life was probably 1 year ago. This has nothing to do with BABB. Is
That's
that okay?
fine. This is about you, life. I want to know more about you.
2016 was a very, very, very hard year for me.
I remember.
Very hard. A lot of death in my life. From my dog of 14 years almost, my little golden retriever, to a best friend of mine growing up, my childhood first best friend I had, to both my grandparents, to I went through a very bad breakup. And then we almost lost my dad. And that was, so 2016 was already pretty rough for me. And then my dad was diagnosed with leukemia, like a pre-leukemia type of a disease. And we almost lost him 2 times to heart attacks. And the heart attacks are complications of his type of leukemia. And my dad is my biggest hero. Whenever anybody asks me, who's your hero? I mean, I do love me some Jacques Cousteau. We went over that. But my father is amazing. My dad is my hero. He is the ultimate mover and shaker. He's a risk taker. He has always taught me to chase a passion and a dream. The money will follow. He's taught me to, when I borrow items, return them in better condition than when I borrow them. My parents are both great, by the way. They're still married. But my dad is my ultimate hero. He's an amazing man with integrity and character, and he's hilarious. So when I thought we were going to lose him 2 times in a row, by the way, it was like 6 months apart, my world really came crashing down. And I thought, here's this pillar of a man being reduced to a deathbed. And it was very hard for me to watch as someone who, this is like the ultimate man I respect in my life. And I will tell you that the thing that got me through that was my family. I have amazing family and friends. I also adhere to a personal set of values and spirituality. My faith definitely got me through that, for sure, because that gives me hope, right? Hope and fear, right? So people have to have hope in something too, and I feel like I have a lot of hope in multiple different things in the world, but in this particular instance, my hope and my faith in God for sure got me through that, coupled with my family. And it was a very eye-opening experience, and it taught me that, number one, spend as much time as I can with this awesome man, because I don't have much time with him left. He's still with us now, but we also know we're on borrowed time right now.
Right.
So spend as much time and always take his phone calls. Don't ignore him. And then it just taught me, it reiterated what I've always said is love fiercely, man. Love fiercely. I don't know why people are afraid to love. People are afraid to love.
Afraid to get hurt.
You can't.
Fear.
I know, but you can't love deeply. Like you can't feel that connection and incredible benefit that comes out of loving somebody. And it's not even romantic love. It can be, but love is many different forms. And so love fiercely, man, like love on the people that are close to you, love on people that you might not like. I mean, what does it hurt, right? You don't like them. You're not going to be best friends with them. Fine. That's fine. A lot of people don't like me. That's fine. But just love on them, because that sets you aside from everybody else in this world. Just love fiercely.
Right. Can you share some of your personal set of values that help you kind of get through the tough times? Because you said you had a personal set of values that help you get through it. What are some of those?
One is that everything in life is temporary. That always goes through my mind when I'm going through a hard time. Everything is temporary. Even if it means it carries you through the end of your life. Your end of your life is, in my set of value systems, life is just kind of a blip on the radar in our whole journey as a soul, as a being. So for me, everything is temporary, including, like I said, anything that might even carry you to the end of this life here. And you can endure anything. Humanity is resilient. We can endure a lot. Maybe not anything, actually. I'm going to change that. Not anything. But we can endure a lot, and it's not going to last forever. And that gives me hope.
Okay. And it would be safe to assume that the most influential person for you when you were growing up is your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Any other lessons or words of wisdom that he taught you that continue to help you today that you want to share with us? I'm sure there's numerous, but you shared a few.
Yeah, there is numerous. He always told me, you better pick your boyfriends right, Sarah. You better pick good men.
All right, good.
Or else
That's
I'm going to show up on the front door with a shotgun. I'm like, oh, geez.
That's a good one. What else?
I said it earlier, but the biggest one is that and he continues to tell me this, he's like, Sarah, if you chase the money, there's nothing wrong with money, by the way. But if you chase the money, you're going to be more apt to be unhappy. If you chase the passion and do the right thing and do something that's innately that you really want to do, the money typically comes because people see that in you. They see that drive and passion. You're not out there for the dollar. You're out there for something greater. And people want to give you money because it's different. It's different than how other people maybe run a business. Again, I'm not at all saying money is bad or chasing careers. Right. Money is great, actually. Money is great. And, if you have a lot of it, you should give to organizations, or give back, leave some type of legacy. It doesn't even have to be money. Just leave the world a little bit better than when we got to borrow it.
Correct.
So there's nothing wrong with that. But my father, instilled in me, chase that passion, chase that dream, and chase that fire. Because life's not very long. It is a blip in the radar. And you chase that money, you're going to miss out on a lot of experiences that were in your heart from the start. So chase those.
Okay.
Chase those.
I like that. I agree, too. Tell your dad I agree with him.
I will.
Amen.
He's awesome.
Preach. All right, so when you were 21 years old, where were you living? Just a few years ago, because you're still very young.
Oh, 21 years old. Where was I living?
Yes.
I was living in Brentwood, Northern California.
Okay, so still in the Bay Area.
Still in the it's kind of outside the Bay Area, but yes,
Okay.
yeah, California.
Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
We're I'm going to meet with you, 21-year-old Sarah, in a coffee shop,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to sit down with her and give some advice to her. What kind of advice would you give to her?
Mm-hmm. Stay away from Fireball.
Okay.
No. I would look at myself and I would say, stay the course. I would say, Sarah, stay the course. Listen to that gut and listen to your heart. Because I look back at my life now, and I can genuinely say I don't have regrets in my life. I've made bad decisions. I wish I could have made different decisions maybe, and outcomes would have been different. But the ultimate, what has brought me to sitting here at this table with you, Amani, right here in this evening, is all of the life haphazard circumstances that have happened to get me here. And that's, breakups and, death and failure and figuring out a career and all the other things that happens when you're 21, right? And I would just say stay the course and make the best decisions with the information that you have, but listen to that fire. Don't ever let that passion die out. Don't ever let your childlike wonder for life die out. And don't ever stop playing. Always play. I don't care if 21-year-old Sarah says, well, what about when you're 80 and your hip hurts? Still play. Continue to play because life loses so much of its wonder as we get older, and it doesn't have to.
Right.
Doesn't have to. Life is serious. Every day I deal with children who are on the precipice of death because someone thought that they were possessed by a witch and the village has outcast a 4-year-old. We all deal with heavy stuff. I deal with heavy stuff. But why can't we take a moment in life and look for that magic and say, we shouldn't stop playing,
Okay. I hope your hip isn't hurting when you're 81. Let's not put that out there. Let's take that back.
Dude, but if I can get like a new one, I could be bionic.
This is true. The flip side.
Yeah.
What is one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
That I'm not always right.
Oh, okay. Tell us how
if I'm being very transparent.
As you are. Thank you.
That I'm not always right. And I'll be honest with you, Amani, it's taken me a long time to learn it, but I still struggle with that one. I'm a very stubborn person. I'm very strong-willed. And when I have a goal, I will go after it, especially if it's for humanitarian work. Like, nobody tell me I cannot rescue that child. I will. I will go in the middle of the streets and fight with my machete to rescue that child. And you think I don't, but I do have a machete. I do.
I wasn't even going to ask, but I'm not surprised.
So this can be an advantage in life, but it also is a disadvantage. And I have had to learn to shut my mouth and open my ears more and know that there are many ways to accomplish the same goal.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how we get there because it's sometimes like that cliche. It's sometimes in that journey to get there. But I didn't always think that way. I thought, well, no, mine's the best way, best journey. But I've had to learn to kind of slow down and say, no, there's about 9 ways to get there. And each one of them is beautiful. And each one of them has merit and value. And mine actually might not be the best way. And the only way I've learned that is with age and time. To be honest with you, time, age, and experiences have taught me that. But even still, I fall back into my pitfalls. You can ask my boyfriend now. I'd be like, oh, no, she thinks she's always right. It's still work in progress.
Sometimes we call that selective amnesia.
That's exactly what it is.
Yes. That's a different topic for a different day. You're a nurse. So we'll let you speak on that in the next interview. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? So, for example, mine would be, I help people unlock their creativity through the art of teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence? Take your time.
Well, the first thing that comes to my brain comes from my life motto, which is yes is the answer, what is the question?
Okay.
So I would say that I want to leave a legacy through the life that I have to give, through all of the random haphazard circumstances that seem to happen to me, and also the choices that I make.
Good. Well done.
Thank you.
We're going to make a bumper sticker tonight.
That's a long bumper sticker.
That's good. It'll be 3 bumper stickers.
Yeah, right? Won't fit on my Prius.
What is one new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year or 2 that has been very beneficial?
I walk everywhere. I walk.
Even up in the Bay Area?
Yes.
Really?
I live in San Francisco. Living in LA, you don't get that advantage. San Francisco, I walk everywhere. My gym, post office, grocery store, I mean, you name it. It's in my neighborhood within a 1 mile radius. And while it's good for you, of course, to get out and about, that is time that I would normally spend either driving, but driving, it'll take you, 5 minutes, whereas if you walk, it might take you 15. So it's time. I've really gotten more time to reflect. And when you're walking, it's not like you can do 1,000 other things, So
you could try, but
I can try, but like every time I try to cross a crosswalk with my cell phone in my head, I end up on those YouTube things where women tripping on themselves. So, but you take that time to, listen to music and reflect and think about things going on in your life. Next steps to take. It's I don't practice a lot of meditation in the traditional sense because I have a lot of energy. I'm a high energy person.
Yes,
so
you are.
It's hard for me
That's why we love you.
Thank you. But it's hard for me to sit for 20 minutes. And I think meditation is beautiful. But I can't discipline myself enough to do that every day and have that solace, although I do love it. Like I practice yoga. But for me, walking, I'm still busy, but that's my time where I can really just reflect or do absolutely nothing. Just let my brain melt into a song I'm listening to in my iPod or something. But walking, it's given me time.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, great habit. Now, we love books on the show. So, take a minute to think. Is there one or more book that maybe you've read? It can be recently or some of your books that are favorites over time that you would tell people, stop what you're doing right now, get this book and start to read it immediately.
I didn't think you were really going to ask me this question.
Yes, this is a question we ask everyone.
Because it's a very embarrassing fact about me is I don't read books.
Okay.
I read like tropical medicine books and
well, that's understandable with
poverty
your career.
alleviation books and vascular access books. They're very boring. Oh, I am embarrassed. I'm trying to think.
You can think, or you can give us one of your science books if you want to. You never know.
Nobody wants to read those.
You never know. Never say never.
Because my tropical medicine book is really awesome. It's all about like malaria and bugs that crawl through your feet and stuff. It's really cool and gross.
Okay. What's the name of it?
It's literally called The Guidebook to Tropical Medicine.
Okay. That could be your book.
Let's go with that. Like, can't think of anything else.
Perfect. That's unique. No one's ever mentioned a tropical medicine book before. I love it.
Check it out. It's riveting.
Great. All right. So tell us how people can find you online, both for BABB and yourself, and maybe if people are interested in making a donation, kind of what's the best way to find you online and interact with you online?
Mm-hmm. We are everywhere. So you can visit our website at buildabetterbenin.org. And then again, that's BENIN.org. You can also follow us on Facebook. You just go to our Facebook page, /BuildABetterBenin.
Yes.
And we are on Twitter, although we don't tweet a lot. We feel that Mr. Trump has kind of taken the corner on that, so we don't want to be on it anymore. And then...
You still can tweet. Use it like a PR announcements, but carry on.
And then we have an Instagram, of course, Build a Better Benin. Yes. The good thing is we're the only Build a Better Benin out there, so if you just Google us as well, we pop up.
Good. I'll add it to the show notes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we're almost done here. Before I ask you the final question, I always ask everyone, is there anything else maybe you wanted to share or mention that we might not have talked about, or did we cover everything? It's kind of, little open forum for you before I ask you about giving wisdom to everyone else.
Wisdom from me. Oh, boy.
Yes.
I'm going to share a story.
Okay, share a story.
Can I share a quick story?
Yes.
Okay. I was driving in the city of Cotonou, which is the big city in Benin. And it's hot, of course. It's like 100 degrees there and the humidity is terrible. So I have all the windows rolled down. I've got myself, a friend in the front seat, and 2 4-year-olds in the back, twins. And the twins are a friend of mine's twins. And I'm driving through the city and the twins get into a fight. Chupita and Chupina are their names.
Okay.
Chupita and Chupita get in a fight like all 4-year-olds do. And they're hitting each other and they're crying and they're yelling, but they're yelling in tribal language. So I don't understand what they're saying. I'm stuck in traffic in this roundabout. They're yelling. I'm yelling. I'm like, what's going on? The windows are down. And we pass this motorcycle and it has a woman on the back of it. And she looks at me and sees what I look like. And she looks in the back at 2 4-year-olds screaming and fighting. And she gives me this nasty look and she speeds off and she tells the cops at a roundabout coming up that a white woman is stealing children out of Africa. So I get to the roundabout, they barricade it off, they pull my car over, they pull me out of the car. They're speaking in very, very rapid French, by the way. At this point, my French is like a toddler's, like toddler level. So they're yelling me in French. The girls are still screaming in the back, by the way. And I'm trying to explain to them that these are not my children. And they're like, clearly they're not your children. We're going to arrest you for child trafficking. And I'm trying to explain to them, the reason I'm in this country is to take people out of trafficking and give them a safe haven and rehabilitate them. And I couldn't get that across in French. So it was coming across like as if I was trafficking. And I dug myself into this hole. And then I had a machete in the car because it's sometimes not the safest place. And so I carry a machete in the car for protection. Wow. And I told you my life is like haphazard circumstances of randomness. I can't make this stuff up even if I tried. I have a machete in the car and the officer's like, why do you have a machete? And I was like, I grow corn in the village. I like made up something, and which is true. I actually had a couple corn stalks at the time, so it wasn't a total lie. But the whole situation looked very bad. And to top it all off, my cell phone wasn't working, so I couldn't call Chupita and Chupina's mother, who was in the market. We were supposed to meet, and I was taking her kids because I had a car and she had a motorcycle. So I couldn't call her to try to get the mother on the phone. And the whole thing was just this huge debacle. They sit me on the curb. They pull me out of my car and sit me on the curb with 2 guards with guns as if I'm trafficking. And I'm thinking, my life is the total antithesis of what's happening right now. And I don't know how to get myself out of this situation. So thank goodness the passenger with me was trying to explain and they weren't believing him because I couldn't prove these girls were mine. And he had to go get his friend who was the chief of police. Thank goodness he knew that guy. And we finally got the mother on the phone and she came down. I mean, it was a debacle. I was on the side of the street for like 3 hours. And then they wanted me to pay a bribe, which was really interesting because they said, we'll let you go from this trafficking charge if you just pay us $20. And I was like, out of principle, I won't pay bribes when I'm there. I was like, nope, you can arrest me. I'm not paying you $20. So that is just a funny random story with the moral is, despite what life throws at you, continue on with your passion.
Yes. That was a story filled with lots of irony. Wow.
I know, right?
All right. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
As we go, definitely thank you for being a guest. Love having you. I've known
you.
Sarah for, I think it's been like 8 or 9 years now. So we used to always meet up at Martha's for our breakfast with the dogs. So I miss that because you don't live here anymore.
I know.
But you're doing great. I'm very proud of you. So keep up the great work.
Thank you. So are you, though. This is awesome. These podcasts are great.
Yes. Thank you. So
you
we'll
guys
keep
need
going.
to check them out. They're cool. They're good.
Now, as we go, any last minute words of wisdom or advice for our listeners out there?
I think one little thing is leaving a legacy. I think people might think a legacy is like big musicians and thought leaders and political leaders. And I tend to define legacy very different. I think every human can leave a legacy. I don't think you have to move to a village in Africa. You don't have to be crazy. You don't have to leave your own home to leave a legacy in someone's life. A legacy to me is leaving a mark in a good way in someone else's life. It could literally mean us leaving here and you walking an old lady across the street. One of my best friends, she always says, Sarah, you do all this work in Africa. It's just so great. I wish I could do something big like that. And I look at her and I say, you do. Her passion in life is to rescue dogs and to volunteer at the shelters. And that's not my calling. I love dogs, but that's not my call. You won't find me doing that on the weekends. And she loves it. She fosters them. She loves on these dogs that need love until they go to their forever homes. And I said, but you are, Claire, you're leaving a legacy. Just as big as mine and just as big as you walking an old lady across the street. There's no big or small at all. It's a level playing field because all humans are a level playing field. And so for me, legacy is just do something with your life, even if it's one act before we leave this planet that has left a dent in someone else's. And hopefully that ripple effect will take over.
Good. And for people who are really struggling with fear, What kind of advice would you give them?
She'll look it right in the face and junk punch it.
That's great.
I'm serious. It has no place. Respect it. I say respect it. Look at it. Say, I know you're here. I recognize you're here. I'm not going to ignore you, but you're not going to stop me from my ultimate life goal.
Amen. Preach.
Can I get a witness?
Much. You got a witness on a Thursday or whatever day this is, Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
yes. Thank you. We will see you soon.
Thanks, Amani.
You're
This
welcome.
has been so fun.
Yes. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.